Keto Nana, Cravings and Triggers, Part 1. Hey y'all, Keto Nana here to talk about cravings and triggers, Part 1. In this session, we're just going to talk generally about my experiences in the past approximately 10 weeks where I've been kind of blindsided by cravings and have been slowly gathering information through reading books and also on the web about triggers and what could be causing this, and really looking for ways to manage my cravings. So let's start off just with a quick definition of what a craving is. From Webster, it's an intense, urgent, or abnormal desire or longing. And it's interesting that the example they use is, I have a craving for chocolate, which is 100% true. I do have a craving for chocolate. What a trigger is, at least from what Weight Watchers calls a trigger, is with regards to food, and that's what we're going to focus on today, is food, is a specific food that sets off a course of overeating where control is lost. I'm not sure I 100% agree with where control is lost, because you can recognize triggers, you can recognize what the food is, and you don't have to go crazy. You might just have one. But I think it's really good to understand what your triggers are, so you can avoid them. Because in the early days, and we are in the early days of this keto journey, we're going to get blindsided, by our cravings and triggers, and so it's good to know what they are and how to avoid them. So what started it all off for me is the first couple of weeks. I didn't have any sweetener or anything in my tea, which was like my number one thing that I really wanted, was sweetened tea. And so keto lifestyle is fabulous because you basically, in a broad stroke, you give up, breads, sugar, all those carb, sugary, starchy foods that, pack on the pounds and affect you, neurologically as well as physiologically and emotionally. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me, is the emotional aspects of it. So in the beginning, it's very, very easy, and you're just giving up. And I kind of isolated myself, so I wasn't being exposed to a lot of foods that I that might set me off, that might trigger me. And since I do the cooking in the family, I could determine what our dinners were. So it was really very easy in the beginning. And then out of the blue, I had like a strong craving for a sweetened cup of tea. It's just like, I don't know where it came from. I've been going along for weeks without any problem, and then suddenly I wanted it. So then I started doing some research. I had my blood glucose tester, my Keto Mojo, and my blood ketone tester. So I'm using Keto Mojo for both. And I will put a link in the bottom. I'm not affiliated with them. You can use whatever you want. They're just, my opinion is, they're very good, and their customer service is excellent, and their prices can't be beat, honestly, for the strips, which are the most expensive part of it all. So anyway, I went on this quest that I was going to start testing pre and post having different sweeteners. So I tested Swerve, which I really like, which is erythritol. And then I did Sweet Leaf Dry, powdered stevia, which doesn't have any of the other fillers. It has inulin and stevia, so it shouldn't have anything that triggers. And then I used liquid stevia. I haven't used sucralose yet, which I want to try. And I did not test sugar because for the main part, I already know sugar is going to jump. I guess in this sense of, for the sake of science, I should have tested sugar because then I would know exactly where everything falls. Anyway, bottom line is stevia had uncertain effects on me. Sometimes it seemed like it went up after an hour after I had some stevia. Other times it seemed like it went down and it wasn't having an effect on me. But I decided to stick with erythritol because I'm not having very much of it. I'm allowing myself 1 cup of tea a day that's sweetened. And so I'm only having like basically a teaspoon of erythritol a day. So I figured that was okay. Interesting thing I noticed that once I started sweetening my tea, my morning cup of tea, the one where I would put the MCT oil in it, I kind of wanted more sweetened things. And I had to like think about that. Like, should I just cut out the sweetener? And I've tried a couple of times, and so I know I'm addicted because I've tried several times to just go cold turkey, and I'll make it a day or two, and then I'll go, wouldn't it be nice to have a cup of sweet tea? So there's something going on that I'm still trying to understand this addiction, what's happening with the need for sweetened tea. And I'll discuss that more in part 2 because I'll go through some of the books that I've read and share some of that knowledge with you. But today we're just trying to figure out what's going on and kind of help everyone identify their triggers and their cravings. What's the difference? So there was no trigger for the sweetened tea because I just wanted it. I mean, I wasn't having any other sweetened stuff in my life. My husband doesn't drink, sweetened drinks, so I wasn't being exposed to any of that. So it's just a craving that I had, that I wanted, that I don't know where it came from, and it's persisted throughout the 10 weeks that I've been on this keto journey. And so I'm back to 1 cup a day of sweetened drink, and then I'm trying to mostly not have it. Like I'm having my seltzer water that has no sweetener in it whatsoever. And honestly, this morning I took a sip of it and I was like, is there sugar? I thought I had the wrong thing. There is no sweetener in it. There's nothing in it but natural flavors and water. And it tasted sweet to me. So that's good. I hope I'm on the right track of weaning from sweet things. Okay, so that was my craving for sweetened tea, which I'm still struggling with. The next thing that happened was I got through Thanksgiving without really needing any big glitches. I did have a cold in the beginning of December, and cold medicine kind of kicked me out of ketosis. So I've discussed that in one of my videos. The next thing that came up was the holidays. Christmas Eve was my 8th week, my 2-month anniversary of being on keto. And on Christmas Day, I was going to my daughter's house to, celebrate Christmas with the grandkids and the family. And we had decided we were going to do heavy hors d'oeuvres and dessert. And so I told her sort of my needs food-wise, and they are mostly, even though they don't define it as keto, they are mostly keto. They don't do breads. They are very, very low on any kind of processed foods. So they may not define it as keto, but they really are mostly keto there. But on holidays, they go crazy. And I just wanted to kind of preempt the craziness by saying, I'm doing keto. Could you have a few things, or 1 or 2 things, or I'll bring everything that's keto. I don't care. So we decided on spinach dip and sausage dip. And I just didn't have the chips, but I could have like the dip on a little plate. And that was filling. I didn't really need a whole lot. That was like a snack. Then desserts, I decided to bring a dessert because the things that she mentioned were definitely not keto friendly. And I didn't want to deprive them just because I'm not having it. That's ridiculous. So I think the website is I Breathe, I'm Hungry. And I will put the link in the bottom of this because this was an awesome pumpkin bundt cake. Had swerve in the cake. It had like a little glaze on top of it, and then you dust it with the swerve powdered sugar. So it was very, very sweet. And since I'd never made it before and I hadn't tasted it, and I have had bad luck previously, like when I was doing Atkins and other low carb diets, where I made a dessert, and we'll put that in quotes because it was not dessert, and then served it to the family without having tested it first myself. And I am still hearing about a particular cheesecake 10 years later about how god-awful it was. So learned my lesson, and I tested this pumpkin bundt cake. And you know how big a bundt cake is. And they said in the directions it was 12 servings. Really, 12 servings is massive. So I had like half of that. I had 1/24 of the bundt cake, and it was delicious. I had to force myself to not have any more. And I am not a cake eater. I'm not a cake person. Typically, that has never been one of my things. Chocolate and cookies. Those are my big cravings. So I put it in the little carrying case, went over to their house. We had our thing. Then I served the cake, and everybody loved it. And I didn't tell them that it was keto friendly or how many carbs it was per slice, which was 4, until at the end. And they were like, "Oh, this is so good!" And so they loved it so much. I left it there because we were leaving for our Disney trip the following morning. So I left the cake at their house, which was good because after having the second piece of this very sweet, although it didn't, shoot up my my blood ketones, had no effect on my blood ketones, and had no effect on my blood glucose. Yet psychologically and emotionally, it had a huge effect on me because I wanted to eat everything. I wanted carbs like you wouldn't believe it. And so that, it was when I really started thinking, okay, it's not just the physiological, because biochemically, like sugar, affects the reward and the pleasure centers of the brain, same as heroin does. It's very addictive. And, carbs, when you break down carbs in your body, because it's, into glucose, it's such easy food when your body processes, it causes a craving for more carbs because it wants more of that. That's why you have to go through all that whole keto adaptation to get away from being a glucose burner to a fat burner. So I knew that with regular carbs and regular sugar that was a problem, but I was on stuff that was not supposed to affect. It was almond flour, coconut flour, and erythritol, eggs, all things that are okay on a keto diet. And I had tested my blood sugar after I had that slice, and it did not jump up. It wasn't crazy. It was still well under 100. Excuse me, under 100. I think I was like at 85. So it didn't affect me, yet psychologically and emotionally it did affect me. And so that's really what I want to talk about, is you have to be careful of what causes triggers. I have noticed in myself, because I've been looking at, YouTube videos, like I love High Carb, Low Falutin. I love Headbangers Kitchen and Keto Connect. Love Cooking Keto with Christine. Love those sites. But here's the deal. Every time they make something sweet, it triggers in me, and I have to fight that urge to eat something sweet. High Falutin, Low Carb, Wesley, he is very upfront about what his triggers are. Like frosting seems to be one of them. And so, like, even though you can make low carb frosting with sucrin or with erythritol, the powdered erythritol, he doesn't make it because it's a trigger. He's going to want to eat, yum, 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 want to keep on eating. So even though it doesn't affect your body that way, psychologically it does. And so then you're struggling, you're battling yourself, and you're causing yourself discomfort and dis-ease when you could just say eliminate it. So in part 2, we're going to talk about really what's happening biochemically and psychologically, because I'm reading 3 books right now that are very interesting and talk about. So I'll share those books and the information I get from them next time. But I really just want you to be aware that even if it doesn't affect your blood glucose, it could be affecting you emotionally and mentally, causing you discomfort. You may want to think about that. I'm on this latest kick right now where I have, for some reason, I don't know what triggered it. I don't know if it was the trip that we were on where everyone was eating bread around me and my car reeked of French fries and I didn't have any. But suddenly I am needing bread. And so I found this recipe on Wholesome Yum for keto, low carb English muffins. I made one yesterday. The whole English muffin, and it's massive. You could easily just have one piece. But the whole English muffin is 4 carbs. And I made it yesterday, rearranged everything, like what I was going to eat for lunch, and because after coming off my 20-hour fast, what I was going to have and how it would affect what we were having for dinner, and fit that in. And I've done the same damn thing today, y'all. I'm going to make it. It takes 3 minutes to make. And I'm going to have it again. And then I'm not going to make it again for a while because I'm curious as to why I'm craving this bread. Is it just that I want a sandwich? Could be. I mean, I have read sometimes a carb is just a carb, Sometimes you just want bread. And because it's been 10 weeks since I've had bread, and actually longer because I didn't do bread even before then. I was always on some kind of low-carby thing. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just need some breadish quality. It's not really an English muffin. It doesn't taste like an English muffin. It's just a breadish English muffin shaped thing. But it does taste good if you put some, butter on it, and when you toast it, it's awesome. But it's not a Thomas's English muffin. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is good, and it's a good substitute, and only 4 carbs. So, but I'm wondering what psychologically is going on with me. What is this craving, this need for bread? Where did it come from? And then I'm just carefully watching what I'm sort of craving to eat, and see if it jumps up, because that cake that I had, even though I'm not a cake eater, really made me want everything. Whereas if I have a tiny square of the 90% chocolate from Lindt, that satisfies a chocolate craving, even though it's not sweet. It satisfies me, one little square, and I'm good for days. That cake, I wanted everything because it was ultra sweet. Even though it didn't affect my body, it affected my mind. This bread, I'm interested to see about the same thing, because I made it yesterday, and I've already decided what I'm going to have today. I'm going to make myself grilled cheese with this bread. I'm just curious. So I'm just wondering how you all are coping with your cravings and your triggers. Are you identifying them? Are you, actively trying to steer clear of your triggers? I mean, carbs are hard because unlike drugs, where you can, like if you change your environment and you're not around people who are using drugs, then you're not exposed to them. Same thing with cigarette smoking. If you aren't around people that are smoking, then it's a little bit easier to give up. It's really hard to give up carbs unless you're going to live under a rock or in a cave, because just about everybody in the universe is eating carbs, and you're inundated with commercials. And then you have that emotional aspect of it, where it's, happy family gatherings are always about food, and it's not a birthday if you don't have chocolate cake or whatever. Valentine's Day is coming up in another month. You're going to eat chocolate, or obviously you're not loved. There's a lot of emotional association and psychological association with food that we have that trigger us and can lead to our downfall. So I think really identifying it and kind of working through what they are and doing our best to find healthier alternatives. So I think this English muffin thing that I have is obviously a healthier alternative, but I'm still curious to see what it does to my need for other things. I'm totally avoiding keto cookies. Totally. And I don't think I will. I mean, maybe when I reach my goal weight, I'll try. But for right now, I'm truly afraid that I would not be able to stop at 1 cookie or 2 cookies. And the cookies are my thing. And then I'm going to want a chocolate. It's like if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want a glass of milk, and he's going to want this, and he's going to want that. I think if you give a Nana a cookie, she's going to want 2, and then she's going to add chocolate chips to it. And then before you know it, she's off the wagon or has severe stomach distress because of all that erythritol. So stay tuned for part 2, where I discuss the books that I've been reading. Keto on, take good care of yourself. Until next time, bye.